The following is a special presentation of Ashland University's College of Arts and Sciences.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the CAS Spotlight, a show where we spotlight the different faculty, staff, and departments in the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm your host, Chelsi Howman. With 17 departments across campus, Ashland's College of Arts and Sciences encompasses a wide range of programs with everything from art to social work, history to science, English to music, just to name a few. Today, we have two special guests who will talk more about the recent changes here at AU. Dr. Gordon Swain is the Faculty Senate President, and Dr. Jeff Sikkenga is the Senate Vice President. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Right. So there's been a lot of recent changes, specifically the cutting of 15 faculty members. How did the faculty, maybe you can talk more about this, Dr. Swain, how did the faculty as a whole react to those cuts?
Well, I'd have to say that there was certainly shock and surprise and disappointment. I mean, we're, as a faculty, even though we're spread out over various different colleges, we are kind of one group together, and so we kind of feel it when decisions are made like that. I mean, so kind of first off, we just didn't understand why the decisions had to be made that way, why faculty had to let go, and then also why those particular faculty. I mean, so kind of first of all was just shock, I think. For a few days, I think people were just, why did this happen? Why did this particular thing have to happen? I mean, the kind of, we're a family, and you, even though it wasn't happening right then, but to know that at the end of the year, 15 members from our faculty plus some retirements on top of that would be affecting us was just surprising, shocking, sad, all of that.
And how do you get those faculty members to keep moving forward after such a big change? And either of you can answer that.
Well, I can tell you from talking with some of those who were not renewed, they still have a strong sense of professionalism, what they owe to their students, first and foremost, that they want to be the kind of teachers and professors that they have been and that their students expect. So there's just a kind of their own sense of dedication and sense of duty to what they should be doing in the classroom. That's the first thing that I've seen among them. And then a lot of people coming alongside them and helping out, willing to write letters of recommendation, for example, for colleagues who are going on to other institutions and applying there, willing to help out in any way, professional or personal, that they need it. So I've seen the faculty really come together around those folks to help them how they can.
Are you satisfied with the administration's rationale behind those cuts?
I'd say no. Realistically, it's hard to understand. I mean, it's not really our job to figure out whether those kinds of things need to happen or not. I think, it's hard. I mean, we can't be given all the information. I mean, there was decisions that were made at high levels based on information we don't have. I think the faculty in general would say that we don't have too many teachers. I mean, we have a lot of students. We're not offering lots of extra classes, so to say that we have too many faculty doesn't make sense to us. Now, if you look at some sets of numbers, perhaps that makes sense, but then if you look at each individual situation, you're pulling a person out of a job that is needed. So, I mean, in that respect, it doesn't make sense to us. I mean, I don't think any of the faculty would say, yeah, we needed to cut 15 faculty, or even particularly if you went down to the individual that department needed one fewer faculty, that department needed one fewer faculty. Those kinds of things we can't understand. But we weren't asked to make those decisions. It really, to a certain extent, is not our job to make those kinds of decisions. Staffing decisions are made at a different level. So, I mean, we can respond to that. I think we certainly did ask for the reasons, and it appears the reasons are primarily monetary, and the judgments were made on productivity, though I think everybody's been ready to admit that at that point, purely on productivity, not every best decision could be made, just because there are other factors that enter into it, like tenure and timelines and that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, Chelsi, if I can add
Absolutely.
to that, I think what Gordon's point is really important. The faculty who are non-renewed, it does not mean that they were unproductive. It does not mean that they weren't good professors and good teachers. So I would hope that no one would read into that and say, oh, if my professor got non-renewed or my colleague got non-renewed, it must be because they just don't deserve to be here. That's just not true. That's not the basis. It wasn't the individual merit of particular professors that was one of the criteria. So it doesn't mean that they were unproductive, or it doesn't mean they weren't a good professor.
Did they explain to you at all what the reasoning behind it was, what they looked at when determining who should get cut?
I think as best they could. I mean, the explanation was that if you look at the financial scenario for the whole university, you look at how many students we have, how many credit hours they take. If you look at how many faculty we have and the loads that they're teaching, that at least in comparison to, I think Dr. Crothers would say, in comparison to what he's seen at other schools, that the numbers didn't match up. That just, the baseline was you have this many students, you have this many credit hours, you shouldn't need this many faculty. And so on the financial end, his analysis was that we're paying too much for faculty to teach the number of students that we have. So at that level, it may make sense if you understand those numbers, and I don't know, I don't have any experience with those numbers. I think we do a good job and we need all the faculty we have, but if somebody else looks at it institution-wide, might say, okay, number of faculty too much, the solution is fewer faculty. So that initiates the process of saying, okay, which faculty do we cut to get to a number that's reasonable? Now that equation doesn't take into account this department, that department, something else. So the first decision is, okay, we need to reduce the number of faculty. Then it's a process of figuring out which faculty, where are they, and that kind of stuff. So I think that's where the basis for that was kind of a rudimentary calculation of some kind of productivity, how many credit hours each department is generating and that type of stuff. And those were, I think everybody will admit that those were very rough numbers, that they didn't really measure the work that faculty did. And I think that's one reason faculty are so upset, is that when it comes down to that's the explanation, is that we looked at, but you end up comparing faculty in one department with faculty in the other. You might have one department that to deliver the program is very labor intensive. There's a lot of one-on-one stuff, and in another program, all of the classes, the best kind of education you get is in the classroom, because you're imparting direct knowledge rather than the experiential stuff. So kind of just one number to count productivity did not take into account all the differences between that kind of stuff. So I suppose if once the decisions had to be made, they had to be made on some basis. I don't think faculty liked very much that basis for those decisions being made. I don't know that there was any better basis, though. I mean, you could get down and you could make an argument that no faculty clearly were expendable and that kind of stuff. So in terms of, no, I don't think we got a good explanation. We got kind of the surface explanation, not one that was satisfactory in terms of, okay, yeah, now we understand how everything happened. It makes sense to us and it was the right choices. I think we may understand how things were made, but we wouldn't agree with the choices that were made, or even the process to coming at those choices.
Okay, well, transitioning just a little bit, can you explain to me what Faculty Senate is? What is their purpose?
Sure. We are the elected representatives of the faculty that from all the colleges send representatives. They have an election every year for positions which are multi-year positions, and they come together, and we're sort of like the United States Senate. We have legislation that we discuss and vote on, and things like curriculum. The Faculty Senate sets control over the curriculum, and the Senate itself has lots of committees and subcommittees that deal with particular issues, more than just curriculum, professional standards for faculty members, admissions and marketing for students. So the Faculty Senate is involved with faculty issues, student issues, and university-wide issues.
Did the Faculty Senate really have much of a say when these cuts were being made at all?
No.
Not at all?
No. I can say, I mean, Jeff and I were in meetings. I mean, we did talk with the president and the provost, and maybe the possibility of some faculty cuts were brought up, that, you know, the president might say, well, it looks like I looked at all the numbers and it looks like we might have to do some faculty cuts. But that was it that we heard. And the president may have hinted at a Faculty Senate meeting that there may be some cuts to come. I mean, we had a sense in the wind that maybe something like this would happen. Things were pointing that direction. But in terms of having a role in determining even what the process would be to determine how the cuts would be made and who would be cut, we were not asked to have a role in that.
Up next on the CAS Spotlight, we will talk about the academic prioritization process. Stay tuned with us.
Really, that's what I feel separates this department. The professors are great, but the ability to just do media right away. You're not going to learn anywhere near as much in the classroom as you do just being out there, reporting on something you have no idea what you're talking about. Figure it out. They expect you to mess up. They just want you to make the mistakes now, so when you're graduated, you don't make the mistakes then.
If you're just joining us, our guests on this edition of the CAS Spotlight are Gordon Swain and Jeff Sikkenga, the Faculty Senate President and Vice President. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the prioritization process, which is another big change going on in campus right now. What are your feelings, Dr. Sikkenga, about the prioritization process?
I welcome the process. I'm glad we're doing it. I think it's an important process. It's really a comprehensive review both of the academic programs at the institution and a review of the non-academic side of the house as well. So every program, whether it's a major in a department, all the kinds of majors in departments, programs outside of majors like certifications and licensures, all of those academic programs in every college, in every department are under review. The core is under review. Academic structure of the university, Professor Swain is on that committee. And then on the institutional side, admissions, finance, facilities, institutional advancement, alumni relations, athletics, student life, all of that is under comprehensive review.
Okay. And how do you think that process is going? Where are they at right now with that?
I would say, I mean, probably 3 weeks ago, I would have thought they are not really getting underway at all. I think the upper levels of administration were more concerned at that time with the finances and that type of stuff. So we got past the non-renewal of faculty. I think that was a big bump that the administration felt they needed to take care of first. And their energy now has moved to the prioritization and the comprehensive review. So at least the two committees that I'm on now have met, and we kind of have an agenda and a timeline for what we're going to do. So I'm feeling much better that at least we've identified the tasks and the things that need to be looked at, and we're diving in. So I think, I don't know, at Senate 2 weeks from now, we'll have all the committees report to Senate. And so there, at that point, we'll kind of get a feel for whether the committees are all kind of up to speed and working hard at their tasks, or whether they're kind of still trying to figure out what they're about. But I say overall, I think at least we've gotten a good start now. It's a little bit late in the year. I think the schedule really had it for starting, right away, early fall. But there were other things going on, and so I think there's still a good chance that we'll do some good work. I think starting this late, I'll just go ahead and say that I think it's going to be difficult to maybe resolve everything by the May board meeting, particularly because there's planned to be a kind of open comment period. So when these committees, the work groups, and then the subcommittees, and then the kind of umbrella committees get recommendations and then put them out there and have a chance for everybody in the community to respond. There needs to be some time for that and to respond to those comments that come out and that kind of stuff. So I think with that, we're going to be pretty hard pressed to do really good work on all these committees and then have the open response time and so forth before May. So, but I've been kind of getting some sense from some of the committee leaders and stuff that they are not inclined to be quite as aggressive about making sure absolutely everything is taken care of, before May and so forth, but rather more understanding that some projects need to get started by then, but may be more long-term in terms of figuring out some more technical stuff. But certainly there will be some decisions that will be ready to be made by May.
Absolutely. What types of criteria are the committees looking at in determining whether or not something is, I guess, of a higher priority?
Right. There's a rubric that was drawn up last spring by the Planning Committee, which was made up of faculty, staff, administration, and board members. And I should say that all the committees, subcommittees, and work groups are combine Board of Trustees members, administration members, and faculty members, with just a couple of small exceptions. They're all made up of all of those different members of parts of the constituencies on campus. All of those are reviewing all those programs based on this rubric that was set up last spring, which essentially says there'll be one of 5 ratings given to every program. And a program isn't just an academic thing, but it's anything that uses resources at the university. So that could be building maintenance as a program. It could be history or political science as a program. They will receive a rating of enhance, maintain, review, restructure or eliminate, and revisit. And so the idea is to identify the programs of distinction, what the university does really well and is very strong at, and what are some challenges the university faces, again, across the academic and non-academic sides, and then rate those according to those words. And then to get to those words, there's a very long rubric that was actually set up, a template for evaluating and grading every program. And all the committees have those rubrics, and they are doing that grading based on reports and self-studies sent out by departments and programs and units of the institution to those various committees. So my department, History and Political Science, the chair wrote up a self-study of our programs, had the members of our department look at it, comment on it, send it back to him, then he sent it in to the process, and that counts as a self-study that the Academic Prioritization Subcommittee will then read and make a judgment about the programs in History and Political Science, and it'll be that way across the institution.
Okay, and clearly all of these changes cause a lot of tension. So how has the relationship been between Faculty Senate and the president and the provost?
I think probably I've been somewhat frustrated up to now just because I get uncomfortable if I don't know what's going on. And until recently, not really knowing what the goals for the comprehensive review were, just, it's this huge thing and all these important decisions are going to be made at the end of the year. Just not knowing really what the board was expecting to get out of that, or even what the administration was expecting, was difficult for me, because I really want to know, okay, so how is this going to go? I don't need to know what every decision is going to be, but I want to know how it's going to go, so I can kind of, myself be comfortable with it, and then leading the Senate, help the Senate have the right conversations about that kind of stuff. So up until a few weeks ago, just not knowing anything before the committees were really working, and not having a sense of really where they thought this was going, how much decision making needed to happen right away, and that type of stuff. But now I'm kind of feeling after the 2 committees that I sit on have gotten rolling, that the expectations are a little bit more realistic, that in fact we're going to be very careful about identifying problems and even more careful about jumping to solutions or identifying kind of directions that we want to explore. So with that in mind, I hope that faculty are getting more comfortable with the process. When it was totally an unknown, then it's a very tense situation. I spoke to faculty, and many of them would say, I'm just really worried that my department is going to get canceled, or my program is going to go away, or something like that. where it wasn't till recently that I could say that's not really the decisions that are being made. Decisions might be to identify a program that needs to be looked at, but there's very little chance that there's going to be a program that is just going to be completely thrown away. There isn't a category in there that says dispose of completely. It's restructure, or it's look at again, or that type of stuff. And so I'm a little bit more confident now that the end result of particularly the academic prioritization stuff is going to identify, like Jeff said, our strengths, things that it's very easy for us to kind of sit on and say, we're doing really well here, and in fact doing this would help us, or to identify our weaknesses. And then once we've identified that weakness, then seriously go into it and say, okay, so this department is weak, or this program doesn't have many students. What could we do? Is it really something that we want to get rid of, or is it something that could be enhanced through recruiting, or just better marketing, or kind of restructure the curriculum to make it easier? So there's a lot of different ways that could go. And so I kind of feel now that we're in a little bit more comfortable mode in terms of understanding what the outcomes of these processes will be, and having a little bit better sense of where it's headed. A little less kind of confusion about where it's all going to head.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I would say that people should understand that in the judgments, for example, on the academic prioritization side, if there's a major that doesn't have a lot of students, for example, that doesn't automatically mean that major is in trouble. There's a number of factors and criteria that are looked at, and a major could have a low number of students but be really important to the mission of the university, make a big contribution, for example, to the core curriculum, and also have great opportunity for growth in the future and some potential for restructuring and reworking so that it could really flourish, whether it's in numbers or it's in quality. So it's not simply a numbers game. It's not simply a judgment of lots of majors, therefore good program, few majors, therefore bad program. It's many factors involved, especially the quality of the programs and their importance to the mission of Ashland University.
And clearly all of those things are things that affect students. So how, maybe you can answer this a little more, how have the faculty been in their communication with their students regarding all of these changes?
Well, we try to give regular updates, as Gordon was saying, from the Faculty Senate. Each committee, every member of the Senate who is on one of these committees or subcommittees or work groups make a report to the Faculty Senate. We ourselves talk with the Student Senate President and Vice President, and so we hope to be able to get the message out from what's going on these committees from us to them, and them out to the students. And of course, Senate meetings are open. Faculty Senate meetings are open. They're usually on 3 o'clock on certain Fridays of the month, and I'm not sure if many students want to do that for 3 o'clock on Friday, but if they do, or the media are there, and student media have been there, which is a great thing, that they can get the word out to the rest of the students on campus to tell them what's going on. But certainly the idea is for the process to be as public and as open and as deliberative as possible.
Should students come to faculty with any questions that they might have?
Oh, certainly. I do kind of wish that there was a little bit more student involvement in the review processes, but to a certain extent, some of the stuff that we'll be talking is kind of behind the scenes stuff. I mean, the nuts and bolts of kind of what has to happen behind closed doors a little bit. And we are looking kind of at the long term, not to say that students can't perceive the long term. I mean, but their time here is, typically 4 years or maybe more. We'll take them for as long as they want to be here. But so they may not have the long perspective that faculty or the trustees or the administration have. But there certainly are going to be times in the process where recommendations or ideas go out to the whole community. And at that point, it will be important for students to grab a hold of those, talk about them, give us some feedback, give some feedback to the administration, and that type of stuff. Before that, I don't know that students will really see much of what's going on. I mean, it's not going to affect classes. I mean, any kinds of decisions would be way down the line in terms of implementation. And the faculty, certainly we're of one accord that we will let any changes, we'll protect students as much as possible from any changes, particularly the 15 faculty that were let go. I mean, we will cover to the best we can. Each one of those people brought something special to the institution, and that piece can't be replaced. But in terms of quality of education, that kind of stuff, the faculty, we will act as one and make sure that students are not kind of left out of the process and that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that on the prioritization process side, any decisions about programs, one thing the administration, the faculty, and the board have all agreed on is any changes that are made to programs, the students who are already here and in those programs, they will be able to finish out their programs as they came into them or as they're only slightly modified, so that it'll be the same program essentially that the students had when they came here.
Those are definitely good things to know. On the next segment of the CAS Spotlight, we will talk a little bit about what the prioritization process means for the AU core.
Above everything else, above all of the experience that we get, you develop a second family through the journalism department. We're not just students, it's not a divided student-faculty relationship. You really get to know everybody, and you can call the journalism department your home. And when you can call a department your home and you're comfortable around all of those people, you're able to develop skills that you might be afraid to kind of go for otherwise, but we're able to push each other and give each other that confidence. And I think that above the experience, that gives us that extra little push that other schools don't have.
Welcome back to this edition of the CAS Spotlight. Joining me today are the AU Faculty Senate President and Vice President. All right, so another attempt at change has been looking at the core. And I understand that there's two committees kind of looking at that. So what is the difference between those two committees looking at the core?
Well, there's on the one side, there's the core curriculum work group, which is part of the Board of Trustees comprehensive review. And that work group is headed by Dr. Bill Vaughn of the philosophy department, who is the core director. And their job was to put together a self-study of the core to submit to the academic prioritization side of the review process. And any possible recommendations they would make about the core would go to there. They understand their work to really be an evaluation of the existing core, not proposals for whole-scale changes to that core. And then on the other side is the Senate Core Review Group, which is a group of faculty put together from last spring. The Senate passed a motion, the Faculty Senate passed a motion calling for a review of the principles and outcomes of the existing core curriculum. So what are its principles and outcomes, and what should they be? And that work group has been put together, and they are right now in the process of really looking at the core documents and saying, what are the principles, what should the principles be? And the relationship between the two is sort of, the Senate group will be the group that really, if there's any big ideas for changes and proposals for reforms or changes of any kind, they will be the ones who sort of bring up those ideas and then bring those ideas to the Faculty Senate, and then from the Faculty Senate out to the broader faculty. Because the core curriculum obviously is a really important aspect of our education here. It affects obviously all students. It affects a lot of faculty. It affects all colleges. Almost all majors are somehow touched by the core. It's really something that's a central piece of the university. And if it's going to be changed or reformed in any significant way on a curricular level, that has to happen through the faculty. Because one of the things about Ashland University is the faculty have authority over the curriculum.
When looking at those two committees, are they really working together to determine those changes that need to be made to the core?
That's a good question. There's a good working relationship between the two, but they really have different jobs. So the Senate work group is really the place, the kind of think tank that's really considering all the big ideas and investigating the big ideas. And the core curriculum work group that's part of the trustees review is doing the review of the existing core, not necessarily considering big ideas for curricular changes to that existing core. I'm sure they're thinking of some ideas, obviously, because they're careful students of the core. But the relationship would be something like, as I envision it at least, The Senate work group will study the core, send it out to the faculty senate, it'll go out to the broader faculty, and of course to students and the whole community for conversation and discussion. Then that would kind of loop back through the Senate review group, perhaps into the Board of Trustees review, or go straight from the Senate up to the administration and the Board of Trustees, but that it would ultimately come back through the Senate, and the faculty then would have authority over those curricular changes.
Okay, and you touched on it just a little bit, but just to clarify, what really is the goal of re-examining the core?
To see, do we have the core that we should have? Really, to say, what are we aiming for when we have this centerpiece of liberal education here at the university? And what does it mean for a student to receive a real liberal education? What are its purposes and goals? And is that what we're getting right now at the university? So how can what should the core be? How could it work best for students in educating them? Raising kind of some of those big questions. You know, Gordon was here, and he and I were here when we first decided to do the core, change the core from general education requirements back in, was it 2000? 2000. To general education requirements to a set of core curriculum courses. And we had that big, broad conversation among the faculty then, and really we're having that conversation again now after 15 years, saying, okay, it's been 15 years. What do we think of the core now? Do we like it as it is? Should there be changes? What are we trying to accomplish? And are we actually accomplishing that?
And this is kind of a question for both of you, but should the core be changed in your opinion?
I think that the principles, and I'm kind of you're asking me to kind of get ahead of the review committees, but my own thought is that the principles, what we're trying to accomplish with the core is the right thing. It's the right thing for AU. I think over the 15 years, how that's implemented and how it's meshed with the rest of the curriculum, with the majors and that kind of stuff, there are some issues there. And I think those need to be worked out. Whether the core stays exactly the way it is and maybe some work is done to mesh what the major curriculum is along with the core, how do those fit together, or whether some parts of the core turn out to be redundant. In other words, we're trying to accomplish it. Do we have to accomplish it within the core, or are majors accomplishing some of those goals? Because the core is kind of the common thing that all students do, but they also get a lot of good education in their own major, and we do need to take advantage of that, so we're not trying to do the exact same thing in two different venues. So I would say it certainly is something, it is time for us to seriously look not only at what we're trying to accomplish with the core, but if we agree with what we're trying to accomplish with the core, how do we best do that? How do we do it efficiently? How do we do it effectively? And what is kind of what will work with AU now? In 15 years, the institution has changed quite a bit. I mean, we have a new College of Nursing and Health Sciences, which kind of has some different dynamics going on and that kind of stuff. So it certainly is the right time to look at the core. Whether it will be changed in any substantial way, little ways, I don't know. But I think we need to have a really robust conversation about that so we can all be agreed on really whether it needs to change or not.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, no, I would echo those sentiments. It's time for that kind of conversation. And I don't want to prejudge the outcome. That one of the great things about this is the whole review process is whether it's the core that we're prioritizing and examining, or whether it's academic programs or institutional side, student life, all of those issues. The good news about this process is there's no predetermined outcome. We are really looking at things openly, honestly, and freshly as best we can. So, and that includes the core. So there are lots of people on campuses, among students and faculty, different colleges, different majors who have very distinct views on the core, so different views, sometimes clashing views on the core. And so we want to let all those voices be heard in part of the process, and then try to have an open public deliberation and come to some agreement. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree, because you can never get everybody to agree, right? It's just the nature of the thing, but that everybody at least has had a chance to have their say, and that the curriculum really does, the core curriculum especially, really reflects AU's commitment to the broad principles of liberal education that the university was founded on, way back in 1878.
And a lot of people would say that the core is kind of something that makes AU unique. It's something that makes the students well-rounded. So how can you ensure that by changing the core, by altering some of the classes that are being offered, that a student's quality of education isn't being jeopardized?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm hoping personally that any reform of the core actually is used to refocus the core on exactly what you're talking about, a quality, liberal education for students that exposes them to the most important questions that any educated person should really confront, and then also has the effect of teaching them really important skills, being able to think really well, write really well, read really well, speak well, do math well, all the important skills that you really need as a citizen and as a human being to be out there in the world thinking for yourself about important issues. That's what I'm hoping, that the core will be refocused around those big ideas and purposes.
And I would agree exactly the same thing. I think by looking at the core again, and it's time that we, instead of eroding the good stuff that we're doing in the core, that we can actually emphasize it. Just like the whole prioritization thing is to identify, okay, what are the good things that we're doing and how can we do those better? And if there are parts of the core that we're not really achieving, how do we change those so we're achieving better? Or if there's something that we're trying to do in the core that we really shouldn't be doing, doesn't belong in college or doesn't belong in this university, then let's do away with it. But let's figure that stuff out. Let's ask the hard questions. Let's figure out what we're trying to accomplish. And then the end result should be even better than it is now. So if students are saying, hey, this is great, I had a fabulous experience here, hopefully the next generation of students will say, hey, that was really good. I was really challenged there, but this really made me kind of the person that I am by the time I graduate.
Our hope is, I really echo that, our hope is that the core will really live up to its promise of 15 years ago to be a program of distinction at the university. You say, what makes AU special, different, distinct, and distinctively excellent? I hope the answer is, and especially will be, after this process, the core.
Up next, we will talk about the future of AU. Stay with us.
I really enjoyed working camera for the football games. It was just a good group of people. It was like more or less the same group every week, so every week we got to know each other. And especially being a freshman, getting to know people out of class right away like that really solidified me, let me know that I made the right choice coming here. And just being able to look back and say, wow, I did that at Ashland.
Welcome back to the CAS Spotlight. We've been talking about the recent changes here at AU with the Faculty Senate leadership. On a little bit broader spectrum, I think we're going to move on to now. What do you think is the overall financial health of the university?
I would say it's still up in the air. I'm more confident that at least decisions have been made intentionally to get the university on a solid foundation. I know that was the argument behind reducing the number of faculty here. Of course, I don't agree that that was the right way to do it. But compared to previous years, it is very important that next year be a year where we're not spending a whole year just worried about, if we can find two dimes to rub together. That's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Every year in the middle of the year, we've had to make decisions about cuts and that kind of stuff. And when you're making cuts in an emergency situation, you never make good decisions. And some of that may have happened this year. But I think that next year, if the decisions have been made do play out the way that they've been promised to, I think it'll be kind of the first year that we're not concerned, from day one, but even again in January and so forth, on how things are going to go. If enrollment holds up, and we my understanding is the budget is not being based on some pie in the sky idea of how many freshmen and how many graduate students and how many transfers we can get, but a realistic number. If on the expense side we've cut things down as much as possible, but we're doing things in an intelligent way so we can cover everything that we need. As long as we're able to hire enough adjuncts to cover the classes that need to be covered. And one other piece is fundraising. I think there is a need to get some of our important donors to pony up some money. Not that it's make or break on that, but that's going to make the difference between we have a kind of okay year and we have a comfortable year where we can start really thinking about directions that the university can head, ways to enhance the things that we do well, ways to kind of pick up the pieces if we've been kind of leaving something behind and that. So I think next year we'll have a little bit of wiggle room and we won't be in a huge panic about finances. I think for the rest of this year I'm pretty confident that there aren't going to be huge crises that come along. I mean, there will be kind of little issues as there always has been. We are kind of this year cutting it kind of close, but I think better than previous years. So I think financial-wise things look good. I don't, I have to kind of be, I'm optimistic, so I need to be kind of, looking that direction. Somebody else that you ask might say, no, it's going to be horrible. They haven't fixed any of the problems and so forth. But I think we've made some real progress.
And this is kind of a question for both of you. What is the future, do you think, of AU?
I think the future can be really bright. We have a great legacy from the past, and with the prioritization process, with really, we're going to be beginning a strategic review process and strategic planning process, which is really saying, what should AU look like in 10 years? People are asking those questions, and then they're really going to actually develop budgets. For example, as Professor Swain was talking about, we're going to budget realistically, and we're also going to budget around our priorities to say, this is what we should be in 10 years, so let's actually put our money where our mouth is and budget accordingly, so that the university really is reformed, reshaped, and moves forward in that direction. And I think that's a really important step, very forward-looking. So I think with the right ideas, with the right purposes and principles above all, and then with the right people carrying out those principles and purposes, we will definitely be able to thrive and survive and thrive in this market. It's a tough market, but we can be distinctively excellent, and that's the way we need to think about ourselves, and that's the way we are really beginning to think about ourselves. What's distinctive here? What's excellent here? How do we put those two things together and mold AU for the future in 10 years? And we're starting that process now. So I'm much more optimistic now than I have been in the last couple of years about the long-term shape and future of the university.
I think the most important piece of that is that I think processes are starting, and with the interim president and kind of the interim structure and the board being more involved, we're almost guaranteed to come out of this year understanding ourselves better. I mean, who we are, what our potential is, but also with a better mind for how we make decisions about the future. Because if we don't have good mechanisms to make decisions, we'll continue to make poor decisions or quick decisions, things that get us in trouble, things where we're not looking to the future. But if we develop, better ways of using data well, if we intentionally get a strategic plan that we all agree to and really does inform budgeting, but curricular growth and program growth and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of directions that we could go, but if we agree on a direction and we have good processes and we have faith in the people that are making the decisions, then a lot of good things can happen. I mean, certainly, on the pessimistic side, we could make poor decisions and get ourselves continue to be in trouble, but I think all the signs are there that we are trying really hard to set the stage to prepare ourselves to head in a good direction. I mean, for students that are here now, seniors are going to graduate at the end of this year, so I'm sorry for them because they have been in pretty much years of turmoil. I think next year, things are kind of be when we implement things that come out of the prioritization process. There'll be a shakeup there, but I think already we'll be able to see positive signs of the direction that things are headed. And then 2-3 years out, I think we will really start seeing some of the payback for all the work that's being put in this year and has been put in last year and will be put in next year on restructuring, on refocusing, on planning for the future. I think we'll finally be able to see, okay, this is who we are, this is where we're headed, and it's going to be a good thing.
And is there anything else that either of you would like to add?
Well, I'm really hoping that, and I'm really glad to see this among the faculty. I saw it among the students. On student media, in the Collegian, for example, letters, student activities, publishing things and sending stuff out among faculty conversations. What I've really seen is the idea that, hey, we love this place. We want this place to be excellent, and we know that that's what's going to attract students. That's what's going to retain students and quality faculty, and move the place forward. So I feel like we're shifting the right direction. We're moving the right way toward a real focus on excellence, and understanding that excellence really builds on itself, and you build a culture of excellence, and that's kind of what we're starting here. So I'm hopeful about that.
One piece that's really important for the rest of this year and next year too is building trust. You know, you've probably heard that before. I'm sure when the provost was here, he talked about that too. Trust is something that needs to be earned, okay? But I think we're in a situation now where we'll start seeing some of the outcomes of trusting each other. But some part of trust does take actually stepping out and saying, okay, I'm going to suspend disbelief, or I'm going to be an optimist rather than a pessimist. And not naively, but kind of stepping out there and saying, okay, I have a little bit of faith that things are going in a good direction as opposed to a bad direction. And it is a bit of a self-fulfilling wish, I think, that if we choose to look at the positive things that are happening rather than focusing on the negative things, many of which are in the past, I think we can actually make better things happen. And so I do kind of every opportunity I have I get try to sell that idea, is that we shouldn't be naively just optimistic, but we do need to kind of change from looking at how bad things maybe were and particular pet peeves that we have about things that happened in the past, and instead look together as the future, look for our role in what's going to be happening, and looking for ways in which we can partner with the administration, with the Board of Trustees, with students, all across the board, to guarantee that the work that we're putting in heads us in a good direction, and be confident that actually that is the potential that's going to be realized. And I think that's important. I mean, if we live in the past, we're going to just repeat the past over again. But if we can kind of, do a little bit of wishful thinking, I think that will help us deal with what needs to be dealt with this year in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Well, thank you both so much for taking time out of your day to be here with me. And thank you for tuning in to this edition of the CAS Spotlight. I'm your host, Chelsi Howman. See you next time.